Um, Before we start, I just wanted to acknowledge the traditional territory that I am in. I'm also tuning in from Toronto. It belongs to many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. I also wanted to acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, as well as the sorry, as well as the Williams Treaty that is signed with multiples Mississaugas and Chippewas band. So just to let you know who we are, we have Culture that's behind the Cobblestone Collective. We have Charity who's our MC, and I am just going to be your presenter of today. Before we get started, I just wanted to get a sense of how we're feeling with Excel. There are just sort of 5 major groups that I sort of thought about what we can do with Excel. And I could obviously speed through certain things if we're feeling comfortable. So are we familiar with certain key formulas to analyze data? And when I'm thinking about key formulas that we're using, like total sum, counting, the mean, average, formulas, can we convert our data into our graphs? Can we organize our data according to what you want to present? So that leads into filtering. And can you also make comments in Excel? So just let us know in the chat how you're feeling, and then I can sort of speak through certain things if I have to. Nice. Perfect. Yeah, and this is an absolute like this is a session for people who don't like you don't need to have any Excel skills. We're just going to continue. Yeah, perfect. Oh, okay. So we have a wide range here. Nice. Perfect. Awesome. Okay, so essentially what's on tap here today is that we are going to just go over a brief overview of what like how Excel looks like. We are going to be focusing on the web version of Excel just because of that collaboration aspect of it. I'm assuming, you know, a lot of us are working in teams virtually, so that sharing collaboration aspect of the web version really allows us to sort of have dynamic spreadsheets without losing any sort of data. Then we're going to try and organize our data. So splitting cells, formatting them, we're going to try and free some rows, and then presenting data, analyzing it. And then we're going to have a little bit of Q&A. If there's a particular need that you wanted to sort of go over, we're happy to support you as well. So the way we're going to go through it today is that we're going to just download a spreadsheet and we're going to work through this spreadsheet together. It's essentially like a mock attendance sheet, but essentially all the skills that we're going to be learning today is adaptable to all forms of data. We're just going to go over the same spreadsheet so that everybody is familiar, like we're all working from the same source. So if we can just download this, and I know Coulter is going to sort of drop that link into the chat, and I'll show you how we can just download that. Alrighty. So when you click on the link, you'll see that it's kind of like a web version of it. And let's see. So this is how your how the spreadsheet is going to look like. The way you're going to save it is just go to the top left corner in the file section. You're just going to save as, and make sure you're just downloading it as a copy. You're more than welcome to work on this spreadsheet on the desktop version. But if you want to sort of experience, because it's slightly different, the web version and the desktop version, there's certain capabilities that you only have access to on the desktop version that you don't have on the web version. So if you want to practice that, just make sure you save as a copy. So download that as a copy, and then just head on over to your OneDrive and just upload that to your OneDrive folder. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to do that. And then once you're ready to go, just let us know in the chat as well. So then I know that we're ready. Awesome. Perfect. Cool. Okay, so this is how our web version looks like. It looks very similar to our desktop version. It's green. That's telling us that's Excel. If you don't know, it's the top left corner. It's telling us that it's Excel. We have a couple of tabs here that we want to focus on. We have our home that will give us all of our formatting needs. We have our inserting, and that's where we would insert any sort of graphical or any sort of image that you want to put into your spreadsheet. Formulas, so our key formula, our sum, average, mean, median, and then our data where we are able to sort and filter accordingly. And then review is where you then share when you're collaborating with a team member, then that's where you can actually add new comments or show other people's comments. Yes, I can for sure zoom in a little closer with the spreadsheet. Yeah, awesome. Okay. And so that's it. So I'm just going over the first couple of tabs that's at the top. So and then finally we have our view, and that allows us to zoom in and out. So if I wanted to zoom really, really into it, I can go for 200%. Right. You're more than welcome to work through it on the desktop version, but keep in mind that some of the functionalities that you have access to the desktop Excel, you would not have access to that on the web version. And if you're sharing that spreadsheet and you're hoping that your teammates are able to do certain functionalities that you're able to do on your computer, unfortunately, they won't have access to that on the web. So whatever you feel comfortable right now, if the desktop version works, what we're doing right now, they all work on both platforms. So the desktop or the web, it's fine. Awesome. Okay, so Excel, it sort of denotes its columns into letters. So if I'm highlighting my entire column A, you know that every data point that's within that column is highlighted. I can copy, I can delete. That's what I can do. And then in terms of row, it just sort of denotes it as a number. So if I'm referring to a particular cell, it will just be the letter and then the number. So for example, if I'm highlighting A1 here, A1's all I have written in there is just simply student name. And then if I say go to like C3, then I can see that like the student was late because it denotes L. So that's how we can just sort of reference our cell using our column letter and then our row number. The reason why I want to sort of make note of that is because, and I'm just going to zoom out just a little bit, just because I want, actually maybe I will just insert a column here. Essentially, if I wanted to duplicate a column, any sort of information, there's two ways. I can either go to the cell, copy, and then go to my blank cell and paste it. Now that also ensures that your data is the same, but there's also another way where you can just sort of type it in. I can just type in P. But if you're manually typing in all the data, so like if you're manually inserting a bunch of data, converting it from paper copy to digital, that's when you sort of have, information gets lost. There's probably some spelling mistakes. So if you're collecting all your data onto the spreadsheet, one thing that has been really helpful is to lock the cell. And the way we're going to be locking our cell is essentially referring to the cell. So whenever we're referring to the cell, we're first going to type equal sign. And then the equal sign is going to allow us to then click onto our cell. So in this case, I'm going to say this blank cell is going to be my B2 cell. So I know that if I am going to, so I don't need to type it in because everything, all the information in my C2 box is pulling the information from my B2 cell. Now, obviously, what's great about Excel is that I can drag, I can drag it down, I can drag it across the row, but if I don't lock the cell, what's happening is that the reference cell will move alongside with you. And so you don't want that to happen, especially when we're dealing with attendance, we're wanting to deal with specific students or specific dates. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go back to this equation, so equal that cell, and we're gonna add a $sign in front of the B. And what that's telling you is that it's locking the reference point as only B, as only column B. So every time you put in a $ in front of the row or the column variable, you're locking that cell. So if I'm only locking the B cell, the B column, if I'm dragging it, every information that is from the column B will be pulled to my column C. Let's just change our equation a little bit. And if I were to add a $ in front of my cell, because remember the row is a number, so I'm going to add a $ in front of the row. Then it locks both the column as well as the row. And if I were to drag this column down, it will all be the same information because I've essentially asked this cell to only reference that one data point. So when it comes to information where you have a particular standard that's at the top of your spreadsheet, that it's a constant number or a data point, you can always use the $ to sort of lock it. And depending on what your needs are, you can either lock the column by putting the $ in front of the letter or locking the row number. Okay, so I can just repeat this again. Essentially, if I want to duplicate my results here, I can just type equal, and then I can just hover that particular cell. So I have C2, and right now, everything that's in this column is pulling from this cell. If I want to double check, I can just double click on the cell and I see equal to B2. I want to make sure that I'm only pulling information from the column B. So I'm going to lock column B. And the way I'm going to lock it, I'm going to just place the $ in front of B. So then if I'm dragging down, it's only pulling information from column B, nothing else. If I want to change this formula, let's just say I want to only copy all the information that's from B2. So I don't want it to be dynamic as I'm dragging down. I can also lock the row number. So by locking it, I can also add a $ in front of the row. And as you can see here, so $B, $2, and then if I were to just drag this cell now, all the information is going to be the same because I have locked the reference cell to be exactly the same as my reference cell, B2. So that's one way to locking your formulas, especially when you're dealing with averages and you only have a certain set, like you wanted to pull averages from a particular column, but you want to make sure that it's only from that column. Always add the $ in front of the letter. That ensures you to pull information from that column. We're good so far. Thank you, Stacy. Awesome. Yeah. So feel free. And then we have Coulter in the back end who's just going to be answering any questions. So we're just going to continue along. So remember, $ locks our cell. And we can refer it by the column and we can refer it by the row. Another powerful tool is to refer it by the tab. So when we're collecting data with Excel, what I like to do is to just keep one tab that's only my raw data. And then I just open up a new tab to analyze my data. So if we go up to the bottom left, you'll see that I've already created another tab that's called report. But in order for us to create a new tab, all you have to go do is just go to the plus button and it will prompt you, it will immediately create a new tab and it will just simply be called sheet 1. And you can feel free to rename this as report number 2. Just so you know, and then we can obviously drag and drop. And what I love about it is that you can also color code it. So if you're sharing this tab and then you have the same color scheme, like you know that if it's green, then this report is good to go. You can send it to your admin, you can send it to your managers. But if it's not good to go, then probably you can make it into red. And you can always right click that, go to tab color and change the color accordingly. I love color coding things. So as you can see here in my report, I wanted to just have a summary of how many total present absences and lates that my students have. And so I'm going to be calling the information from the previous tab. So the way we're going to do this is to use the Countif function. So same thing, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. I'm on my present tab for the first student here. I'm going to type equal, and I'm going to type in Countif. And as you can see, there's already my function here. So I can just click on that. And then I'm going to bracket, so Countif. And then you can see that this function is calling two different things. So first you have to tell this function that it's calling from a range. Where is it pulling its data from? From the attendance sheet. So we're going to go back to the attendance sheet. And we're just going to drag the entire row for the first student. So every time you're making the formula sheet, especially with the first time that you're doing your formulas, it's a little bit of a workaround. So yeah, so so remember equal Countif, and then go back to your attendance tab and then just drag the first row for the first student. So I've already explicitly stated the range, and then I'm going to call a criteria. Now for this function, it's mainly using it to count numbers. Because we're really asking the function to look for a letter, we're actually going to be putting quotations around the letter. So I'm saying you are only counting if there is P that's located in this data range for this student. And I'm going to type enter. And as I can see, Alyssa here has been present 19 times in the month of March. And the reason why I wanted to show you is in terms of referencing is because if you look at the exclamation mark here, it actually tells you that the exclamation mark is in a different tab. So if I don't want to, go back and forth between two different tabs, I can actually type it in to the cell directly. So I'm going to do this again. So equal sign Countif, and I know I've named my tab attendance. So I can just type attendance, exclamation mark. So that's telling Excel to look for the attendance tab. And then say that you're going to look for the range B2 all the way to L2. And then comma, criteria, double colon, P. And then again, enter. What's happening? Sorry. And you can see that it has spit out the answer for you. Yeah, so $ locks the column and the row, and then the exclamation mark when you're dealing with multiple tabs at the bottom and you have renamed them accordingly, you can simply just type in name, exclamation mark to refer to all the information that's within that tab. So if you know specifically the range, then you can type in the range yourself. But just so you are understanding how the formula is looking like, because sometimes when you're sending a spreadsheet to a team member and they may not understand what the exclamation mark means, then you can now you know. So you can say like, oh, the exclamation mark just tells you attendance is a different tab, and I'm pulling all the information from the attendance tab at the bottom. Because sometimes you can hide a tab. Let's just say this is an information that I don't want other people to see. I can just right click on my attendance tab and you can hide your tab. And you won't be able to, when you share this spreadsheet now, the people won't be able to see the attendance tab because it only contains your raw data. And what they see is all your report tab, but it's still pulling information from the attendance sheet. So it's another way of sort of presenting your data. So keeping your raw data in one sheet and then analyzing your data on a different tab, and then recalling information from that raw data sheet. Yeah, for sure. In terms of like the different functions, I can definitely add that into the slide deck, and you already have access to that. So the minute I update the slide deck, you'll see all the different functions that you can have access to that you might find yourself using over and over again. Yeah. So far, so good. I know it feels a lot, but we're just going over the overview, and then we're going to start playing soon. So that's it for referring our cell. So the reason why I wanted to go over the attendance sheet is because we want to essentially find out exactly how many times have each of these students been present, absent, or late. Now, using what we have just learned and using the Countif function, we can actually just count how many times they have been present, and I can just drag this formula down all the way to the bottom, and I'll be able to count easily how many times these students have been present, because it's the same formula. And if I'm going down, you can see at the top that our cells are dynamic. They're changing. So every time you're moving down a cell, it's also recalling a different set of data down the cell. Because you have already created your formula here, now we're going to check out our absent, the number of absences, and then the number of lates. We're using the same equation, but now what we're trying to call out for, instead of the letter P, we're trying to look out for the letter A. So I'm just going to go back to the present cell, and going back to the formula box here, I can just copy this and then go to the absent cell, go back to the formula box, and then just paste the formula. And I can then edit, instead of P, I can look up for A. And as I can see, Alyssa has not been absent once. And now that my first cell is done, I can also just drag all of that down for the entire column for all of my students. And then I can do the same thing for my late. Again, instead of calling out for P or A, I'm now looking for the letter L for late. So going back to the previous cell, copy that from the formula box, go to the blank cell, go back to the formula box, and I'm going to paste that. And once I paste it, I can then edit it, because I'm no longer looking for A, I'm going to look up for L. And I can see Alyssa's only been late once. So, and I'm just going to drag all of those down. So we have just essentially created an attendance report simply by changing and manipulating one formula and copying and pasting that formula and changing that criterion slightly, so, and without having to manually count or having to sort of do anything in that raw data. Because if we are manipulating our results in the attendance sheet, we might have inadvertently change what a teacher had put in. So we had maybe converted the late into an absent, or like a present into an absent. So I, in general, don't want to change anything that's on the attendance sheet. And instead, I actually want to keep it as original as possible. So then all my report, all my analysis is only happening on a separate tab. Okay, so now that we have all of these data, what are we going to use them for? What I really want to show is to, show this cell in a nicer way. So if we want to present this data to other people, it needs to like visually look pleasing. So the way we're going to do this is freezing some freezing rows, freezing columns, so then they can't do anything when they're scrolling back and forth. So what we're going to be doing right now is to freeze some panes. So I want to freeze my header because I have my surname, given name, the headings over here. And I also want to freeze the first 2 columns. So because I'm freezing a combination of like columns and rows, what I'm going to be using is the freeze pane button. So I'm going to be freezing this column, this entire row, and then these 2 columns. So what I'm going to do is click on the very first cell that is dynamic, and I'm going to go to View, and you're going to select Freeze Pane. And then in the Freeze Pane menu, you will have Freeze Panes, and you just have to select that. And then as you can see, it will immediately freeze all the rows as well as columns on that's around that cell. So it's kind of like it's kind of like an upside down, like a frame, a little bit like an L-shaped frame, where you're just trying to tell Excel where to freeze the frame. So I want to freeze the frame around 19 because that's where my surname, given name, present, absent, late stuff are. And so when I'm freezing the stuff, when I'm scrolling horizontally, I can see the names of my students still. And if I am freezing the heading, if I'm scrolling down, I can also see the information accordingly. So freezing your information makes it easier for the user to sort of like see where your data is, especially when you have a lot of information and you have key headings. So freezing panes. Now, the next thing we can also just color code. And what's great about it is that Excel already has a set template. So I'm just going to highlight my entire table, or you can just highlight your entire sheet. And what we're going to do is go to Home. And again, Home is where all your formatting needs are. So you're just going to go and find that Format as Table button. And you can just play around with whatever style works best, because you can just select any of these. And the reason why is because when you're formatting your data as a table, it will give you different types of capabilities. So I've just created my table. I just made it yellow so that it's bright. And when you know, just as a double check, have you made your table or not? You will see on the headings that there's a drop down little arrow. So in the surname, you'll see the little drop down arrow, and if you click onto it, you have access to like sorting. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes where we can just count the number of times our students have been present, absent, and late. We're essentially just building up this report sheet right now. And once you're ready to go, give me a thumbs up, and then we can just proceed. I'm happy to demonstrate stuff too if you're stuck on something. Yeah, so this is so you already have access to the slide deck. You're going to be receiving an email with the recording as well as the slide deck as well. So I'm going to be updating it with key formulas. So you can always review this. And also within the slide deck, there are some animated GIFs or GIFs. So you can also take a look at how I've gone through the spreadsheet. And essentially, it's the same thing as what we're working through right now. Okay, it keeps taking the report instead of the attendance. So are you saying that when you're trying to count the number of times? So I'm just going to redo the zoom in a little bit. So I'm going to type equal count if open bracket and then go down to the attendance tab and just highlight the range. And then go back to report. I can see that it's from the attendance sheet. And then I just have to type comma P, like so. So just double check, make sure that your formula looks the same as mine. So there's like a single quotation mark around your tab name. After that, there's an exclamation mark. This is the range B2 colon U2 comma P. I'm looking for P. And I can also copy this function into the chat so you can just double check that. Stacy, and you're all good? Alrighty, okay. So let's just say we already have our report. And I can also show you the completed spreadsheet as well. So you can actually just have the 2 and 2 to compare to see what sort of formulas I've used in the recording. So you will have access to that as well. So you have your report, and essentially what we want to do with our report is also to call out to key information. So essentially, I want to make sure that I'm highlighting students who have been absent for more than 3 times, who also have been late for more than 3 times. And how we're going to be doing this is to conditionally format our cells. So now that we have populated our cells, we're going to go through conditional formatting. So I'm just going to look at the absent column. So I can actually just highlight the entire column D by clicking at D. And I'm going to go to data. And I'm going to, sorry, because it is formatting, I'm going to go to home and then conditional right here, conditional formatting. And I am going to try and color code it. So I want to highlight the cell if they have a number that is greater than 2. And then immediately, my cells have highlighted students that have been late, that have been absent for more than 3 times. So I have a couple of students that I might need to like track down or email or contact the parents because I have highlighted that by using conditional formatting. So again, I'm in home, highlight cells. And as you can see, there are many different types of rules. What I'm using right now, it's a greater than function. So I'm just going to greater than, and I want to track down students who have been late more than 3 times. So it has to be greater than 2. And it will automatically highlight those numbers for me. So then I can see upon first glance, okay, so these are some of the students that I might need to sort of track down. Is it because of like an event that they've missed out on or something? We don't know. So we're going to do the same thing for lates. Again, we're going to click on the column. So we're going to click on E. I'm analyzing the entire column E. I'm going to go to conditional formatting, highlight cells. Again, I'm going to track down students who have been late for more than 3 times, greater than 2. And instead of having the same color as my absent, I'm going to choose a different color. I want it to be yellow instead. And now I can see, oh, maybe Candy, because she's been late, she's been absent as well as late for more than 3 times, then that's a student that you probably want to go talk to first. So conditional formatting is one way to sort of visually represent key information when you're giving certain criterion for your cells. Now, there's one way that we can do this, but there's also another way that you can also visually express it. Instead of just highlighting it the entire cell, you also want to demonstrate, okay, but maybe a person who's been late for 5 times is more at risk than a person who's been late only 3 times. So I'm going to classically conditional format, and I'm going to select data bars. So data bars, and I'm going to select solid fill. And essentially, it is just going to create each of these cells into data bars. So not only is it highlighting these numbers, it's also showing me, okay, 5 is the maximum times that the students have been late this month. So, and whereas like some people have been late fewer times, they have a lower end. So it, again, data bars is another way for you to visually format your report so that they can be easily interpreted instead of just a long table of numbers. And I'm going to give you a couple of minutes. Just make sure you know where conditional formatting is and you can play with it. Conditional formatting is in home, conditional formatting, and we just did highlighting cells and data bars. I like using data bars just because it sort of provides a more dynamic view of how your data should look like. And it doesn't require any coding or any formula whatsoever. So it's, I have to say, it's kind of fancy. Like you can just show off and yeah, show it to other people like so. And you know, you can see, well, Joe has been absent 5 times, but late once. And it's visually easier to understand versus just to interpret a number. I believe this is also a version that's also on desktop as well. Yeah. Everything that I'm doing right now, yeah, you're able to use your desktop version, Windows. How to hide the numerical value. So, oh, to hide it in the data bars? I am not sure if you can. Okay, let's see. I don't think you, I don't know. Maybe Culture can correct me if I'm wrong, but I like to keep the numbers there just so there is also an understanding of what this scale is. So because like it's only filled, for example, like if you don't have the number and you see that entire box is filled with a color, then you would think, oh man, like did this student like miss out school for 20 times? But once you have a number there, at least I know, oh, 5 is the maximum times of this kid like missing, like being late at school. So yeah. Alrighty, so this is it for presenting data. We can obviously classically condition in terms of like highlighting particular cells. We can also create data bars to just visually have a different way of representing our data. Now, the next thing is maybe you want to sort or filter. Now, sorting and filtering both have a very similar function. What we need to remember is that filtering only filters the entire column. And so it will break your data. So I'm going to show you. I'm going to try and filter the present column. So I'm going to highlight C, and I'm filtering. So I'm going to go to data. And I am going to filter. according to descending. So if I'm filtering descending order, I'm only filtering within the present column. As you can see, all my students' names are following the present number, but it did not propagate to the absent or the late column. So when you're filtering, always remember it's only filtering within that column and it's not expanding to the entire sheet. So when you're filtering, you are not carrying all the data across. So it's only good for sorting out one type of data. So if my report only consists of the present numbers, then filtering would be a good way to go. But because right now I have 3 different sets of data, I have present, absent, and late, sorting would be a better way to analyze your data because you're not just analyzing one column, you're analyzing the entire spreadsheet. So I'm just going to undo that to go back to my original spreadsheet here. So I'm going to sort, and I want to make sure that I'm sorting with students who have been late first, and I want to see who they are. Again, I'm just going to just highlight this cell, the late cell, and then I'm going to go to data, and I'm going to go for sorting. And as you can see, sorting, it's A to Z with a letter with an arrow pointing downward, or Z to A with a letter pointing downward. It's just ascending or descending. You can also change the different types of sorting. I personally have found that I've only been using the ascending or the descending version of sorting. So I'm going to sort it according to ascending. And I can see at the very bottom, all my students here are my students that I need to look out for. And with the sorting, all I have to do is just one click and the entire sheet has been sorted for you. Whereas filtering only filters the entire column. So sorting expands the entire spreadsheet and then filtering one column. The one thing you have to note as well, though, after you have sorted the spreadsheet, you are unable to go back unless you go to home and undo what you have just did. So let's just say you have created this beautiful data table and all the formulas and everything is like properly fitted in, like if it's a pattern, and you wanted to sort it. When you sort that, it doesn't save the previous version unless you undo your sorting function. So sorting breaks the formatting, breaks the original formatting, and it sorts it according to the rule that you want it to be at. So in this case, if I'm sorting from ascending, then I can see all my numbers here. I'm only sorting my ascending numbers by late. So all my late kids are at the bottom of the spreadsheet. You can also undo this and do it descending. So then I can have all my students that are late at the top, reversed. Depending on how you want your data to be represented, once you're ready to go, then you can just share this with your team members and then they can do the necessary actions accordingly. So that's sorting and filtering. And then we also just went through conditional formatting. And that's how we're going to be formatting our results. So if you click at the top of the absent column, would it sort by that column? Yeah, exactly. It will sort by that column. So I can sort it here. I can just click on that button and it will just sort by my absent column. So it can only sort by one source of data, but then it will expand the entire spreadsheet. So I'm just sorting it by my absent right now. As you can see, these are all my absent kids. I'm only sorting it there. And if I were to say filter, so this is how the sorting looks like. Now I want to filter my late. So I'm going to click on the filter icon and I'm going to filter late by descending. And I can see here that it's filtering it by the late column and nothing else is carried over. So if it was on the student name, then it could do alphabetical. Yeah, exactly. So it's not just numbers, it's also alphabetical order. And it originally sorting was for arranging alphabetical order. So as you can see, that's what the icon is showing you. You can go from A to Z or Z to A. So you can sort the students by their last name. You can sort the students by their first name. Yeah. Yeah, I am cognizant of time, so just let us know how you're doing right now. I know it's a lot. Essentially, we're just trying to organize our data and then present it in a, digestible way, just so people can understand what we're trying to do with our report. Awesome. The I just wanted to make a little space on the web version of it, and why this is a powerful tool is that sharing piece. So if you are on the web version, if you go to the top right corner, you'll see this share button. And once you click onto there, you have different options of sharing. So it's going to load. I can actually share it to specific people. I can also allow editing. So if it's within my team, then I can allow them to also edit the spreadsheet live. So when I share it with charity or share it with culture, I can see both of them on my spreadsheet and we can collaborate together. So I'm not the only one who's analyzing it. But if you only want people to view, then you can just disable that editing. And if this is confidential information, so for example, you're sending information to parents, that's sort of like an overview of what's happening at school, but you don't really want them to download it, to have a copy of it. You can also block download. So it will not allow anybody to download this file. They can only have access to this with internet connection with the web browser. Yeah, you can for sure share and analyze at the same time. And what I really love about it, because as you can see, we have a bunch of equations here. Let's just say I sent it to Coulter and he has no idea what Countif does. What I can do is leave a comment here. And so I can just go to review, new comment, and I can say, Coulter, this count if is for counting the number of times the students has been present. So if this, if Coulter doesn't understand countif, if he highlights this cell, this means nothing to him. But if he highlights the cell now, he can actually see my comment. And so you're actually able to have, um, multiple people commenting on various formulas and various reports so that it's not just like a mumble jumble of numbers. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you can actually have 3 people working on it at the same time on the web version. That's what I love about it. Like, it is none of this downloading it, sending it by email, asking them to download it, open on Excel. You can straight up just send them the link, or even better yet, if you know your teammates' email, you can just write their email addresses in there, and then it will be sent directly to their email. And then you'll see that they will be on it. So right now, I'm the only person who's on my sheet, so I can say IL, but if it's Coulter is on it, I can see C right there. Yeah, it might slow down a little bit. Yes, unfortunately, this is only in the web version. Now, if you're more comfortable in the desktop version on the web, there is the option for you to work on your desktop app. It says on the very top here to open in desktop app. So what it will do, it will automatically download it for you, and then it will automatically open it for you on your Microsoft Excel on your desktop. So unless you have signed in to Office 365 on your desktop, it will not automatically sync. So I tend to like to work on the web version. I'm like a browser person, so I keep everything on my browser, and I do my workflow on the browser, so then I can ensure that any changes is dynamic, it's saved on the cloud, and if my team members log in, they'll see the newest version.
Bill, can I add to that?
Yeah.
So, Diane, in response to your question, if you did open this in the browser, it does connect to your cloud. So your virtual filing cabinet is our cloud, and it will automatically update into the cloud for you. So I do I mean, you can open right from your desktop, but I would recommend first starting in the browser and then opening in the desktop so it's already saved to your cloud, and then we'll just automatically update every 5 seconds or so.
Yeah, I know. It did take a little bit of time to transition from desktop to web for sure. But I think web offers something different too. So yeah. A little bit, right? Because of the loading. Sometimes it freezes. I know. And I don't know about you, Diane, but sometimes have you found yourself like when it's loaded, you can't see a single data point because it automatically goes to the bottom of your data. And yeah, exactly. I know. Yeah. So when that happens, that's basically, it's just the web version doing its web thing. I would just go back to the top left corner and I just type A1. So then I know I'm going back to the top of my page. Yeah, that's just like a little hack that I do. Because sometimes I worry. I was like, well, what happened to my data? But turns out it's because it was just showing me this version of it. But turns out all my data is just on the top. So if you have a very, very long spreadsheet, it's important to know where your reference points are. So A2 or A1, that's the top part, it will show you that view immediately. So yeah, some tips and tricks. Anything else? If we don't have any questions, I'm just going to go over a couple of tips and tricks that I've personally loved. And again, you have access to this video. You'll have access to the slide deck as well. And it goes through every single task that we did on each of the slides. So don't worry if you find it's really fast. I know it's a lot to take in. So a couple of things to just sort of like manipulate within Excel. I like to do this one click to choose them all. If you know you're just sort of like duplicating a spreadsheet or you need to do something with the entire spreadsheet, the top left corner with that gray triangle, if you click on that, it will click the entire spreadsheet. So it will highlight the entire spreadsheet for you instead of you dragging and scrolling and you're on your mouse and you don't know, because sometimes you might miss a couple of data points there. And then another one is to drag data across columns. Again, instead of just dragging it, copying it, and then pasting it, you can actually drag all columns. And you can do this for rows as well. If you just highlight the letter, you can just simply drag it to a different empty column. If it's already occupied with some data points, it will warn you. It would say, hey, there's some data there. Do you still want to do that? So don't worry when you're dragging data. Excel does have that prompt that's sort of like asking you, are you sure you want to do that? And then finally, with data validation, before we share it with somebody else, you can also ensure that, for example, you might be sending an Excel spreadsheet to other people to type in information like that attendance sheet. You're sending it to teachers and they're typing in only present, late, or absent. You can actually create a data validation. So you are restricting the user to typing in particular sets of data. So I can send this spreadsheet to the teacher and the only letters that this teacher can type in is P, L, or A. And I can just use this simply using data validation. And I'm happy to show you how to go through that. So we're going to go back to our attendance. You can manually type in just P, L, or A, but you can also create a checklist. So as you can see, it's a drop-down list. So the only options that they can put in is those three options. So you can just go to your cell and go to data formatting, which is data, and then data validation. And then in the data validation settings, you can say allow. And right now I'm allowing any value. So that means if the teacher made a mistake and type in N, then it will save automatically. And I don't know what that means. So you want to restrict. So I'm just going to restrict it by a list of text. And I'm going to restrict it by a list of text P, comma L, comma A. And I'm going to ignore blank. So I'm not even going to let the teacher to put in a blank. And as you can see here, it becomes an in-text cell dropdown. So in terms of just sort of obtaining data, because I know Excel is really great at analyzing data, but we need to first obtain that data. So we can definitely restrict the way users are filling in the form by using data validation. So then we can have data that is workable, that is analyzable at the end of the day. Yeah. I'm cognizant of time, so I just wanted to thank everybody for coming here, for joining us on an hour. Thank you so much. If you felt that this was helpful, let us know your feedback, because we always want to make sure that these sessions are as useful as they can be. And then if you need any help, just look out for the email. The email is going to include the slide deck as well as the video and any additional resources that you would find helpful. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'll just take it back to Charity.
Thanks, Isabella. That was really good. We do have about 3 minutes, and who was it here? S. Ripus, sorry if I mispronounced that. They would like you just to go over that last thing one more time, if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure. Data validation, like the checklist.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so let's just say this is a cell that I want people to type in. I'm just going to highlight the cell, and I'm going to go to data, and then there's a data validation button here. Once you click on that, there's a pop-up window, and it will say allow anything. Right now it's allowing any value. I'm going to select allow list, and I'm going to type in the list of things that I want people to type in, P, L, and A. And I'm going to make sure that the ignore blank is checked. So then blank is not an answer. And I've also checked an in cell dropdown. So I wanted to just make it a little bit more user friendly. So it's literally an in drop-down menu. But if you don't want it to be a drop-down menu, you can also uncheck that. So when the teachers are there, if they type in a different thing, it will give them an invalid prompt. It will say, this is not a valid response. You can't type N in an attendance sheet, so retry. So yeah, it really depends. So it can be a drop down, or it can just be a normal cell, but secretly on the back end, you have validated, you've only controlled it and restricted it to only 3 different letters.
Awesome. Thank you for going over that again. So Coulter has dropped into the chat, he's dropped the link to the evaluation for feedback. If you wouldn't mind clicking on that and filling that in. That is also where you can put, if you want more Excel training. I see a lot of people commenting on pivot tables. They'd like to know how to do that.
Yeah,
so if you
it was
want
part of the slide deck. Exactly. So it is part of the slide deck. Unfortunately, we ran out of time. But if you're interested in doing, like, going through it, it's in the slide deck. Feel free to go over it and just have fun with your pivot tables. Yeah.
There you go. So you do have the information, but if you would like a whole other session on Excel to kind of push it a little further and level up, let us know in that feedback. Also, if you have any questions after this workshop, help@cobblestonecollective.ca is your email to send any questions or comments to. We have users, teachers, educators, facilitators, trainers on our team answering those emails and providing that help for you. There it is one more time. Coulter also added a link to our upcoming workshops. They're no longer EdTech team though, Coulter. We are Cobblestone Collective now. We used to be the EdTech team. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone.